Amina, the archer's burden. The morning sun cast long shadows across the training grounds of Zazzau as Amina drew her bowstring taut. The arrow flew true, splitting her previous shot down the center. Around her, the male warriors paused their drills to watch, some with admiration, others with barely concealed resentment. "Show off," muttered Danjuma, a barrel-chested warrior who had trained alongside her since childhood, but his smile betrayed his pride. Amina lowered her bow, ignoring the mixed reactions. At 17, she had become the finest archer in the kingdom, a gift that seemed to flow through her veins like the blood of her ancestors, yet that same gift had become her greatest burden. "The council summons you," a messenger called from the palace steps. Her stomach tight. And she knew what this meant. The council chamber smelled of incense and old leather. 7 elders sat in a semicircle, their faces carved by time and tradition. At the center sat Sarkin Zazzau, the king, her uncle, a man torn between love for his niece and duty to custom. "Amina," he began, his voice heavy with regret, "your skill brings honor to our family, but the festival of warriors approaches, and tradition is clear. Only men may compete for the title of royal protector." "Uncle, your majesty," Amina corrected herself, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I've trained as hard as any man. Harder, my arrows never miss. When raiders came last season, who drove them back from the eastern gate?" "You did," admitted Elder Yakubu, the eldest among them, "and we are grateful, but a woman as royal protector, it would bring shame upon us. What would the other kingdoms say?" "They would say Zazzau values skill over superstition," Amina replied, her hand instinctively moving to the leather bracer on her forearm, a gift from her late father, the kingdom's greatest archer before her. The king raised his hand for silence. "The matter is settled. You may watch the festival, but you cannot compete. I'm sorry, Amina." As she turned to leave, Elder Yakubu spoke again. "Perhaps it's time we found you a suitable husband, a fine warrior to protect you." Amina's jaw clenched, but she said nothing. She had learned when words were wasted. That night she sat on the palace walls, her bow across her lap, watching the stars emerge. The festival was 3 days away. 3 days until Danjuma, or Musa, or one of the other warriors claimed the title that should be hers. "You're plotting something, I can always tell." Her younger sister Zaria climbed up beside her, nimble as a cat despite her elaborate wrapper and beads. "I'm thinking." "Same thing with you." Zaria studied her sister's face. "You know Mother would tell you to accept this gracefully." Mother accepted many things, look where it got her. Amina regretted the words immediately. Their mother had died giving birth to Zaria, and the weight of that loss still pressed on both of them. Zaria was quiet for a moment. "Father wouldn't want you to be bitter." "Father would want me to shoot." Amina stood abruptly. "I'm going to the forest, don't tell anyone." "Amina." But she was already descending the wall, disappearing into the shadows with the ease of practice. The forest beyond Zazzau's walls belonged to stories and spirits. Most warriors avoided it after dark, but Amina had walked these paths since childhood. Here her father had taught her to read the wind, to become one with the bow, to let the arrow find its own truth. She moved through the darkness, her feet finding familiar trails. At a clearing marked by a massive iroko tree, she stopped. This was her sanctuary. She lit no fire, needed no light. Instead, she drew arrow after arrow in the darkness, letting instinct guide her. Each shot found its mark, a sound in the night, a rustle in the leaves. This was her meditation, her prayer. Impressive, even in darkness. Amina spun, arrow knocked in an instant. A figure emerged from the shadows, an old woman, bent with age, her eyes gleaming with an inner light. "Who are you?" "I am Binta. I was friend to your grandmother and her grandmother before her." The old woman moved closer, unafraid of the drawn bow. "The gift runs strong in your line, but you struggle with it." "I don't struggle with my aim." "No, you struggle with who you are." Binta settled herself on a fallen log, as if she had all the time in the world. "Your great-great-grandmother was also an archer, the finest in her age. They tried to stop her too." Amina lowered her bow slightly. What happened to her? She proved them wrong, but not by following their rules. Binta's smile was knowing. The festival has rules, yes, but there are older traditions, older laws. "What do you mean?" "There is a story rarely told, of the trial of the archer, an ancient test that predates the festival. Any warrior, man or woman, may invoke it. If you succeed, no one can deny your place." Hope flared in Amina's chest, but she tempered it. "Why tell me this?" "Because the gift chose you, child, and when the gift chooses, we must answer, regardless of what others say." Binta stood, suddenly seeming taller, stronger. But know this, the trial is dangerous. It demands more than skill. It demands that you face what you truly fear. I fear nothing. Everyone fears something. You fear that they might be right, that being a woman makes you less. Until you defeat that fear, you will never be free. Before Amina could respond, Binta faded into the shadows, leaving only the forest and the night. The next morning, Amina stormed into the council chamber during their morning deliberations. The elders looked up in shock at her intrusion. I invoke the trial of the archer, she announced, her voice ringing clear. Silence fell, the king leaned forward. Amina, that trial hasn't been invoked in over 100 years. Most consider it legend. But the law remains, she pressed. Elder Yakubu, you know the old codes better than anyone. Tell them. The old man's face was grave. She is right. The trial exists in our oldest laws. Any warrior may invoke it, regardless of circumstances. He paused. But child, the trial requires you to make 3 impossible shots. Shots that have killed more archers than succeeded. Are you certain? I am. Danjuma pushed through the gathered crowd. Amina, don't be foolish. There's no shame in accepting things as they are. There's shame in accepting less than I'm capable of, she replied, meeting his eyes. Will the council grant my request? The king looked to his elders, saw their reluctant nods. Very well, tomorrow at dawn you will face the trial. May the ancestors guide your arrows. Word spread quickly. By evening, the entire kingdom buzzed with news. Some called Amina brave, others called her foolish. Many whispered that she was bringing shame upon her family. Zarya found her in their chambers, methodically checking her arrows. Are you sure about this? No, Amina looked up at her sister, but I'm sure about who I am, that has to be enough. What if you fail? Then at least I tried. Father always said regret weighs more than failure. Zarya embraced her sister tightly. Then I'll be there, watching you succeed. That night Amina couldn't sleep. She held her father's bracer, remembering his lessons. The arrow knows the way, he used to say. Trust it, trust yourself. But Binta's words haunted her too. What did she truly fear? Dawn broke cold and clear. It seemed the entire kingdom had gathered at the ceremonial grounds, a wide field bordered by ancient stones marking the boundaries of sacred space. 3 targets had been prepared, each representing one of the impossible shots. Elder Yakubu stepped forward to explain. The first shot, you must strike the bell of judgment, suspended from the highest tower. The second, you must split an arrow already embedded in the center of a target at 200 paces. The third, he paused. The third shot has no target. You must strike what cannot be seen. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Even the most seasoned warriors looked troubled. Amina stepped forward, her bow in hand, her quiver on her back. She wore simple warrior's garb, leather and cloth, practical and unadorned. Her hair was bound back tightly. She looked like what she was, a warrior ready for battle. The first shot, Yakubu announced. Amina looked up at the tower. The bell hung impossibly high, a small target swaying in the morning wind. The angle was severe, the distance extreme. Most archers would struggle to even reach that height. She closed her eyes, feeling the wind, remembering her father's teachings. Then she drew, aimed, and released in one fluid motion. The arrow arced high, almost disappearing against the bright sky. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the bell rang clear and true. The crowd erupted in astonished cheers. Even those who opposed her couldn't help but be impressed. But Amina didn't celebrate. She was already focused on the second target. An arrow stood in the center of a distant target, barely visible from where she stood. 200 paces, twice the normal competition distance, and she had to split it perfectly down the center. Danjuma stepped up beside her. That's my arrow, he said quietly. I put it there an hour ago, dead center, my finest shot ever. He paused. Beat it. Despite everything, Amina smiled. Watch me. She knocked her arrow, drew back. The world narrowed to just her, the bow, and the distant target. She could feel every fiber of the bowstring, every grain in the wood of her arrow. She became aware of her heartbeat, slowed her breathing. She released. The arrow flew straight and true, covering the impossible distance in seconds. It struck Danjuma's arrow with a crack that echoed across the field, splitting it perfectly in 2. This time, even the elders stood in amazement. Amina had just accomplished something many would have sworn impossible. But the third shot remained. The final test, Elder Yakubu's voice was solemn. You must strike what cannot be seen. Many interpret this differently. Some say it means shooting blind. Others say it means striking shadow or spirit. The truth is, We don't know, the trial is yours to interpret. Amina stood still, Binta's words echoing in her mind. You must face what you truly fear. What did she fear? Not failure. She had lived with the possibility of failure every day of her training. Not death, she had accepted that risk as all warriors must. Then it hit her. She feared that they were right, that no matter her skill, no matter her dedication, being a woman would always define her more than being a warrior, that she would never be seen for who she truly was, only for what others decided she should be. That was the invisible target, not something outside herself, but within. Amina turned to face the crowd. Hundreds of faces stared back, curious, skeptical, hopeful, hostile. Every opinion, every judgment, every expectation. I understand now, she said, loud enough for all to hear. The invisible target isn't out there, it's here. She touched her chest over her heart. It's the doubt, the fear, the voice that says I'm not enough because I'm not what you expected. She drew an arrow and turned back to the empty field. Then, in a move that made the crowd gasp, she pointed the arrow at the ground before her own feet. Elder Yakubu, she called, is there any rule about where I must aim? The old man considered. No, only that you must strike what cannot be seen. Amina nodded, then she released the arrow straight down into the earth at her feet. For a moment nothing happened. Then the ground where her arrow struck began to shimmer. Ancient markings, invisible until that moment, glowed with a soft light, spreading outward in a circle around Amina, revealing themselves to have been there all along, hidden beneath the surface. The sacred symbols of the first warriors of Zazzau, the original protectors of the kingdom. And at the center of the pattern where Amina's arrow had struck, a symbol became clear. The archer, neither male nor female, simply a warrior true. Elder Yakubu's voice trembled with emotion. The foundation stones, I'd heard the legend but never. You've revealed what was always meant to be seen. The truth that skill and honor have no gender. The ancestors themselves bear witness. The silence that followed was profound. Even those who had opposed Amina most strongly could not deny what they had seen. The ancestors had spoken through her arrow, revealing a truth older than their prejudices. The king rose. Amina of Zazzau, you have completed the trial of the archer. More than that, you have reminded us of truths we had forgotten. He stepped down from the platform, approaching her. I name you royal protector. May you defend this kingdom with the same skill and courage you have shown today. The crowd erupted, some in celebration, some in confusion, but all in acknowledgement. Amina had not just proven her skill, she had changed the kingdom forever. Later, as the celebrations continued around her, Amina found herself alone for a moment on the palace walls, the same spot where she had sat 3 nights before, full of anger and uncertainty. Danjuma joined her. You know this changes everything. I know. There will be others, women who want to be warriors now, who will see what you did and believe they can too. Good. He laughed. Just good. You've turned tradition on its head. No, Amina shook her head. I've just reminded everyone what tradition truly was. The ancestors didn't care if their warriors were men or women. They cared if they could protect the kingdom. She looked at her friend. You're not angry. Angry? I've never seen anyone shoot like you did today. That second shot. He shook his head in wonder. I'm honored to serve alongside you, though I reserve the right to try to beat your scores in training. You can try. As the sun set over Zazzau, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Amina felt something shift inside her. The burden she had carried, the constant need to prove herself, the anger at not being seen, had lifted. Not because she had won, but because she had finally understood what Binta meant. The gift had chosen her not to fight against who she was, but to fight as who she was. An archer, a warrior, a woman, all of these things, inseparable and complete. Zarya appeared, practically dancing with excitement. They're saying you're the greatest archer in 5 kingdoms. They're saying you'll train the next generation. They're saying a lot of things. Amina smiled at her sister's enthusiasm. But what matters is what we do tomorrow and the day after. Being royal protector isn't about one perfect day. It's about serving faithfully every day. Ever practical, Zarya rolled her eyes but hugged her sister tight. Father would be proud. I hope so. That night, Amina dreamed of her father. They stood in their forest clearing, and he smiled at her with infinite warmth. You found your way, he said. I almost lost it. But you didn't, that's what matters. He placed his hand over hers on her bow. Remember, the arrow knows the way, trust it, trust yourself. When she woke, the palace was still quiet in the pre-dawn darkness. Amina rose, gathered her bow, and made her way to the training grounds. There was work to do, a kingdom to protect, traditions to honor, and new paths to forge. As she drew her first arrow of the new day, she whispered to the wind, "Thank you, Father, I understand now." The arrow flew true. It always had.